There is a quiet revolution taking place in the world, one that many people overlook because it does not shout, it does not march, and it does not demand attention in loud, chaotic ways. It is subtle, almost invisible, and yet its power is undeniable. It is the life of the woman who chooses to live alone. For generations, society has painted solitude as something to be pitied, as if the absence of a companion is equal to the absence of meaning. Yet for the woman who embraces her own company, solitude is not emptiness. It is the most fertile ground for self-discovery. She carries within her a freedom that unsettles some, inspires others, and confuses many who have never dared to stand alone. To live alone is not simply to wake up in a quiet room or to return at night to a space where no one waits. It is something far deeper, something much more profound. It is to inhabit the depths of one's own soul without distraction, to face both the light and the shadows within, and to build a life that is truly one's own. Most people spend their lives surrounded by the noise of expectations, the constant need to please others, and the weight of traditions that tell them who they should be. But when a woman lives alone, she breaks from this noise. She creates a space where her inner voice is not drowned out, where her thoughts can stretch without interruption, and where her spirit can breathe freely. This choice unsettles the world because it challenges a long-standing belief that a woman's identity is defined by her roles in relation to others. Daughter, wife, mother, caregiver, these are roles that are celebrated, but they are also roles that can confine. The woman who lives alone steps outside of that script and writes her own. She dares to say that her worth is not measured by how she serves, supports, or satisfies another, but by how deeply she knows herself and how courageously she lives her truth. There is immense power in this quiet independence. It is not loud or boastful, but steady and unshakable. The woman who chooses solitude becomes both the seeker and the discovered treasure. She becomes the wanderer searching for meaning and the home in which that meaning is finally found. In her solitude, she builds a relationship with herself that no external bond can replace. She learns to rely on her own strength, to comfort her own heart, and to walk through the world with an authenticity that many spend their whole lives running from. To live alone, then, is not a tragedy but a triumph. It is a declaration of freedom that does not need validation, applause, or approval. It is the act of standing firm in one's own existence and saying, I am whole as I am. And perhaps that is why the woman who lives alone is not bound by the chains that hold so many captive. She has chosen herself, and in that choice, she has discovered the purest form of freedom. When a woman chooses solitude, she is not merely deciding where to live or how to spend her evenings. She is stepping into a territory most people fear to enter. It is the territory of the inner self, where there are no masks to wear and no distractions to hide behind. In this space, she is both the seeker and the sought, both the traveler and the destination. She becomes the questioner and the answer at once, and this is a journey that requires far more courage than following the well-worn paths laid out by society. Most lives are filled with the constant hum of other people's voices, the expectations of family, the opinions of friends, the judgments of strangers. These sounds are so loud, so constant, that many never hear their own inner calling. But when a woman lives alone, she begins to hear something else. The noise quiets, and in that silence a whisper emerges. It is her own voice, fragile at first, uncertain, like the first light of dawn creeping through the darkness. With time it grows clearer, stronger, more insistent. It is the voice that says, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is the life I long for. To listen to this voice is not easy. It speaks truths that may not align with the expectations she has carried for years. It challenges the roles she was told to play. It may urge her to let go of relationships that confine her, to pursue work that others deem impractical, or to cultivate passions that seem insignificant to the outside world. But in solitude, she no longer has to silence this voice for the comfort of others. She can finally give it the attention it has always deserved. This act of listening is transformative. It is as though she discovers an inner compass that points not to where she is told to go, but to where she is meant to be. She realizes that she is both the wanderer searching for meaning and the very home in which that meaning resides. The external world may call her lonely, but within herself she discovers a vastness that is anything but empty. It is a landscape filled with unexplored depths, hidden treasures, and endless possibilities. Society often fears this kind of independence because it is difficult to control a woman who knows herself deeply. A woman who lives alone is harder to bind with promises of approval or threats of disapproval. She does not need to play by the same rules as those who depend on the constant validation of others. In her solitude, she gains the freedom to define her own success, to measure her own happiness, and to shape her life according to her own vision. So, when a woman chooses to live alone, she is not stepping away from life, but stepping more fully into it. She is entering the hidden chambers of her soul, listening to the sacred whispers that guide her, and embracing the path that is truly hers. In doing so, she becomes both the adventurer and the treasure, the journey and the destination, the question and the answer. And in this space of profound solitude, she begins to awaken to the truth of her own freedom. The woman who lives alone carries a kind of freedom that many people do not understand, because her worth is not dependent on the roles she plays for others. She has discovered a truth that many spend their entire lives avoiding, that value does not come from being needed, praised, or constantly surrounded, but from the relationship she builds with herself. Society is quick to measure a woman's life by external markers, whether she has a partner beside her at dinner, whether she is admired publicly, whether her choices meet the approval of family and culture. But in her solitude, she has broken free from those measuring sticks. She is no longer defined by comparison, but by authenticity. Every morning, as she wakes in the quiet of her own space, she gathers a courage that goes unnoticed by the world. It is the courage to rise without the promise of someone else's encouragement, to step into the day without leaning on another's strength, and to carry her dreams forward without waiting for permission. These small, often invisible acts are not trivial. They are the building blocks of inner resilience. They create a foundation that no one can shake, because it is not built on the unstable ground of external approval, but on the solid rock of self-respect. The dialogues she holds with herself are richer than the shallow conversations that so often dominate social life. She asks herself what she truly wants, not what others expect. She examines her fears, not to run from them, but to understand them. She challenges her own doubts, not with empty affirmations, but with lived experience that teaches her she is capable of more than she once believed. In these inner dialogues, she builds a friendship with her own soul, a companionship that cannot be lost to betrayal, abandonment, or misunderstanding. Dreams for her are no longer fragile ideas waiting for someone else's approval. They are seeds planted in the soil of her independence. She waters them daily with discipline, vision, and persistence. Because she is not bound to live for the expectations of others, she can chase goals that matter deeply to her, even if they appear strange to the outside world. She knows that the greatest tragedy is not to live without love or applause, but to live without ever touching one's own potential. Validation, then, becomes something she does not chase. She has no hunger for applause because she has learned the sweetness of self-recognition. This does not mean she rejects companionship or community. Rather, it means she does not seek them from a place of lack. She does not enter relationships to be filled, but to share the fullness that already exists within her. This is why the woman who lives alone is free. She is free from the endless cycle of seeking and proving, from the chains of expectation, from the constant performance of being what others demand. She has turned inward, found her own center, and in doing so, discovered a freedom that cannot be given or taken away. There is a sacredness in the independence of a woman who lives alone. It is seen in the smallest details, in the ordinary moments that others might overlook. To some, her life may appear uneventful, but to her, every act carries meaning. Brewing her morning coffee becomes a ritual of self-affirmation, a reminder that she is capable of creating comfort for herself. Arranging her space is not just tidying a room, it is shaping an environment that reflects her soul, one that carries her essence in every corner. Even the simple act of walking through the world without the protective shadow of another becomes a declaration of strength. In each of these small gestures she whispers to herself, "I am enough." This sense of sufficiency is not born from arrogance, but from a deep understanding of her own worth. She knows she does not need another person to validate her existence. She does not seek approval to feel whole. She stands firmly in the knowledge that her identity is complete as it is. This completeness is the foundation of her freedom. It allows her to move through life not from a place of need, but from a place of choice. Love and companionship are not rejected in her solitude, but neither are they worshipped as the ultimate source of meaning. She has no desire to cling to another out of fear of emptiness. Instead, she opens herself to connection from a position of abundance. When she loves, it is because she has something to give, not because she is desperate to receive. This shift transforms the very nature of her relationships. They are not chains that bind her, but bridges that she may cross freely, knowing she can always return to the home she has built within herself. Her independence teaches her discernment. She does not accept every hand that reaches for her, because she knows that not all company is nourishing. She chooses carefully, understanding that the wrong presence can disrupt the peace she has cultivated. Her solitude has sharpened her awareness, teaching her to value quality over quantity, authenticity over appearances. She does not fill her life with noise simply to avoid silence, for she has learned to find harmony in silence itself. What makes her freedom so sacred is the quiet dignity it carries. There is no need for her to prove it, to display it, or to shout it into the world. It exists in the calm confidence with which she moves, in the gentle assurance that she is complete. This is why she does not fear being alone, because she has learned that aloneness is not the same as loneliness. In fact, her independence has revealed to her that true loneliness lies in living a life that does not belong to oneself, surrounded by people who cannot see who you really are. Thus, her solitude is not a prison, but a sanctuary. It is the ground from which she grows, the soil in which she plants her dreams, and the safe haven where she can always return. And in every act of self-sufficiency, in every step taken without fear, she affirms the sacred truth: she is enough. Perhaps the greatest freedom of a woman who lives alone is the freedom to live without disguise. She has no need to bend her spirit to fit the mold of another's expectations, no obligation to wear masks that conceal her true nature. In her solitude, she is free to be exactly who she is, without apology and without pretense. There is no need to soften her edges for the comfort of others. No need to dim her light to avoid overshadowing someone else. She can finally stand in her own presence and embrace her wholeness. In the stillness of her evenings, when silence wraps itself around her like a cloak, she sits with her thoughts without fear. Many run from this silence because it forces them to confront truths they would rather keep hidden. But she welcomes it. She understands that to meet her own fears is not a weakness but a strength. When shadows rise from the depths of her mind, she does not flee. She listens, she reflects, and she learns. Each confrontation with her inner doubts sharpens her courage. Each honest look at her vulnerabilities deepens her wisdom. What she discovers in this solitude is that she is not truly alone at all. Within her lives the entire spectrum of human experience. She carries the strength of the warrior, fierce and unyielding when challenges arise. She carries the tenderness of the lover, capable of compassion, intimacy, and kindness. She holds the wisdom of the elder, shaped by lessons of the past, and the innocence of the child, unafraid to wonder, to dream, to see the world with fresh eyes. These voices within her do not compete, they coexist, forming the mosaic of her being. And because she has taken the time to know them all, she walks through life with a rare depth and balance. This wholeness becomes her shield against the judgments of the world. She no longer crumbles under criticism, for she has already faced harsher judges within herself. She no longer feels the desperate need for praise, because she has already embraced her worth in silence. When others misunderstand her, label her, or dismiss her, she does not bend. She knows that their view is limited, while her vision of herself is vast. She has touched her own depths, and no shallow opinion can shake that foundation. Her freedom without disguise also allows her to give to the world with greater authenticity, because she does not hide who she is. Everything she creates, shares, and builds carries the mark of truth. Her friendships are genuine, her work reflects her passion, her choices reflect her values. Nothing is tainted by the need to impress or conform. She offers the world her truest self, and in doing so, she invites others to do the same. The woman who lives alone, then, does not live in isolation but in authenticity. Her solitude has revealed to her that the truest form of companionship is the relationship one builds with the self. By embracing all the parts of who she is, the strong and the tender, the wise and the innocent, she has discovered that she is complete, and in that completeness she is free. To live alone is not an escape from life, nor is it a rejection of it. It is, instead, a deeper plunge into its very essence. The woman who embraces her solitude is not running from the world, but running toward the truth of her own existence. She is willing to stand before the mirror of her soul, to gaze long enough and honestly enough to see what is truly there. This act requires a courage that few possess, for the reflection reveals both the beauty and the shadows, both the light and the darkness, yet she does not turn away. She allows herself to see, and in doing so, she discovers her wholeness. The world may misunderstand her choice. It may call her lonely, incomplete, or even strange, for many cannot imagine a life not built upon constant companionship, the approval of others, or the security of tradition. But she knows something deeper. She knows that freedom is not found in being surrounded by people, but in the ability to walk in alignment with one's own soul. She has learned that the applause of others, while sweet, fades quickly, while the quiet recognition of her own spirit endures. Her solitude is not a withdrawal but a sanctuary. In it she has found the space to grow, to create, to reflect, and to heal. She does not need to fill her days with noise to silence her thoughts. She has befriended those thoughts. She does not fear silence, because in that silence she hears her truest voice. And because she has cultivated this inner sanctuary, she can face the world with a strength that is unshaken by chaos, criticism, or change. She has crossed a threshold that many never reach, the threshold of self-acceptance. She has touched the fire of her own being and realized that she does not need to be completed by another. Companionship, if it comes, will be a choice, not a necessity. Love, if it appears, will be embraced freely, not clung to in fear. Her relationships then become purer, born not from emptiness but from fullness. She does not give from lack, she gives from abundance. This is why her freedom is so profound. It cannot be granted by anyone else, nor can it be taken away. It does not depend on circumstance, approval, or possession. It is rooted in the deepest truth of who she is. The woman who lives alone is not bound by society's chains, nor by the fear of solitude, nor by the craving for external validation. She is bound only to her own authenticity, and this bond liberates rather than confines. So let the world misunderstand her, let them whisper, let them judge, let them wonder. She knows that they see only the surface, while she has touched the depths, and in those depths she has found a treasure greater than applause, greater than companionship, greater even than security. She has found freedom, the kind that burns quietly, the kind that endures, the kind that makes her, in the truest sense, unshakably alive.